Hello, or from now forwards will be
Late
decided
here
when a game
of
of
the
Civ.
meeting.
Man, I was really into the map I was working on and did not notice the time till just now. Luckily, it was only a minute past when I noticed the time. But yeah. All right. So, most people at this point should be free of contract stipulations, which means we can get back to working on lore and whatnot for those who have
Huzzah.
interest. This week I was just taking mostly as a break, so I didn't have too much updates. I did finish the Stormlands write-up, so that should have like the faith stuff on it listed, bordering regions and whatnot, the coins they use. I also did a little bit of work on my equipment guide. Let me go post that. We're not. That's one of the big things we need to discuss. Would be what we're wanting to do with the economy, as well as what regions we want to focus on for the living world. But the big update with the economy, the book I just posted, would be at the very bottom of the book. There's a new chapter, essentially, new section, known as random tables. Things I've been working on to basically quickly populate a town shop or a random encounter with, loot. Right now it's just for magic items because I was needing to figure out what items would be in the town shop for today's game, and I was like, you know what, let's be extra fancy and make a table out of it. So I did. But yeah, that's a thing. Overall, I did like the direction from what I remember seeing of what Imp was doing. I believe they are not with us at the moment, but the system I currently have in place, if you look at the book on page 132, is where magic item creation starts. You can kind of see where I was getting at in terms of having a more what's the word for it? I won't really say generic, but a formulaic. That's the word. A formulaic crafting system. I don't know if we have access to Imp's work because they had some solid stuff too. But if people have interest in the economy side of things, feel free to hop in. I can convert the document I have to a Google Doc so people can start suggesting things, putting things in, and all that. But overall, that is where crafting side of things stands, and something that we should discuss proper with those who do have interest in economy, probably in a separate meeting, as this is more of like a general grouping, of fields and departments,
etc., etc.
etc., etc. But that's there. So if people have interest for economy stuff, that's what I have currently, which my players use currently in my games. The system for mundane item crafting needs to be added for non-weapons and armor, but also it probably should be dumbed down a bit because it's a little in-depth, and I think for a large population we should have one a bit simpler. But overall, that's there.
I'm just gonna be that guy just because I want to get it out of my system now. Wow, a 200-page document. That's like 190 more pages than I've had to work with in the past 3 fucking years.
Yeah, I like economy systems. I like building them. I like making items and stuff.
And you're an admin. It's 199 and a half more than what we got.
Yep.
First things first.
We wait for the drop.
Yeah.
Dramatic pause.
I'm gonna say all the words inside my head.
Question is, can they do Durud's 10 stuff?
Pause, champ.
It's gonna be a pretty big spiel when it's a long pause. It's good stuff.
Silence scares me.
Ooh.
Here it comes.
Just realized I was not on no mic.
Incoming, get down.
Before their internet dropped.
Legacy types real fast, right?
Clearly, I'm the one who's gonna get bullied because I'm the only one who's ever bullied ever.
Clearly.
Period.
Let's see.
See, Sithem's is bullying me right now. What the fuck?
While they're typing up the
It's
thing,
normal, though.
could you post the document that goes over each of the regions that we had shared, just for quick links for everyone? Because I want to go over that after.
Not on.
Like, I can go grab it too. Just if someone already has it on hand, then that would be a quick little thing right there.
I genuinely have not looked at anything yet, so
It's all good.
to do that.
It's all good. I'll go grab
There
it.
it is.
I need to
Oh,
do
there we
that.
go. Cool.
Oh,
Excellent.
Aye, excellent. Access denied.
Well, give me your email. Fix it for you.
Request access.
The break is basically over, so we can start continuing on fully converting towards the new structures and focusing on our new more standard community-focused living world organization. I'll be going through the departments whenever I get the chance and basically just talking with everyone to get a feel for how things are, how they should and could be in the future, and any thoughts or comments. Everyone and anyone is encouraged to give input during this period, because things are very much in flux and all viewpoints and insight is valuable.
That was shorter than I thought it'd be. Not gonna lie.
I'm gonna guess wording was a big factor there.
Probably. Anyways, yes. Yeah. I mean, we are in the transition period at this point, getting things set up for the new framework. That's kind of more of on, like moderation side of things in terms of like getting the actual Discord set up in that regard. If people have interest in helping out on that, I do have a role that Legacy currently has. I believe I called it, I'm just going to look because I don't remember. Cleanup. It's called Cleanup. So if you have interest in helping out getting things set up way with the new layout, then I can blap you the tag and you can, get that set up. Otherwise, in terms of Living World, those who do not have access, I'm going to just go check my email real quick and just blap people who need it onto it. Dear God, a lot of you do not have access. Let me go fix this.
I don't know what happened with that because it's technically the old drive link. I don't know why people lost access.
Yeah.
I honestly don't know what happened because I was under the assumption the old drive was not purged.
Well, the old drive was purged. This is now on my drive. It's
Okay.
weird that it's using the same link.
Okay.
But here's a bunch of shares for you people. And let me check to see if I have any other emails. Yep, just got another one from Devil.
Yeah, I just DM'd you my thing.
Yep.
So.
I got you on there without the
Hell
share.
yeah.
So you should be good if you refresh. All right. Let me go remove these excess pages I do not need and transition the recording to Firefox. There we are. All right, so these are the overview of the regions. Some of them do not have any write-ups. Some of them are open source for you guys to work on, as you can see from the collab link. Some of them do have write-ups or a basic overview, such as like the Republic of Lentis has a basic overview. For these, we have a solid setup already of core regions. I think we should choose just a ballpark of around 4 to 8, just to kick things off, to focus our efforts in.
Do they have to be close together on the map?
I would want half on one continent, half on the other, and preferably they should be adjoining countries. So, for example, if we want to go with Lentis as as our focus, we should have one of the countries bordering it, which I believe our Locus is not one of those, but it is bordering another one of the countries bordering Lentis. But we would go for example, the Collective Order of Rayla. That would be a country we could add as one of our 2. Or if we have 3 per, we can do Alentis, Arlogus, and Rayla, for example. And then we'd have the other 3 on the continent of Lashulti being, for example, Kalbush, Arendil, and the Wildlands. But overall, what we choose is really what this discussion should be about. What major themes should we want for this phase, essentially. Let me go copy you guys a link to the...
I'm partial to Lashulti.
Ah, yes.
I mean, we are going to have Lashulti. That's just going to be a given. There's going to be
No, I'm just that was me forgetting that I wasn't on. I wasn't muted. I was like, yes, the political folder, my new home.
yeah in the screen Firefox. Here you are.
All right.
Now you guys can see my stuff. All right. So I'm still working on getting the map updated. That's another thing I was doing this week. I was getting borders marked out and country names marked on the map, so you can see a bunch of these borders now are now visible, such as the Empire of Arendelle has its border visible. A lot of the ones on Hakuda are visible. So that's the thing I've been working on. Also getting the banners for these different countries set up. Because some of them I do already have the idea for, but some of them, as you can see from the regional overview, isn't exactly fully fleshed out. Overall, though, I would like to have the same number of regions in one country as in another. So if we have a total of 6 regions, 3 in Hakuda and 3 in Lashulte, or 3 Hakuda, 3 Shabos, any variation, Barud, Shabos, just general concept of what we're wanting. Get an overarching view of the different regions. Hakuda itself is kind of the remnants of the dying Roman Empire, essentially. Roman being what Vazia used to be akin to. They have, at this point, nearly decayed into non-existence, but are currently pushing forward due to the resulting calamity that caused this giant crater in this, continent here. Known by the people of Vazia as the Wrath of the Hack. So that is kind of the theme of most of the countries in the northern section of Hakuda, would be that they are rebels or remnants of this empire, with Vazia being the only true remaining member of the empire, while Alentis is closer to what became of the Romans after the fall. So they're a bit closer to, it's the B word. I can't remember it.
Byzantine?
Yeah, Byzantine.
Byzantine?
Yeah. Overall, it does also have some more eastern routes, such as the Golden Marches and the Okugan Marquisate, as you can probably see from those 2 regions' write-ups themselves. Also has some fancier, fantasy-esque style regions, such as the province of Orlogus, which is fairly akin to Valenwood, if you're aware of that region from Elder Scrolls. But it also has plant people and lizard folk tribes and a bunch of other crazy stuff like that.
Which is why Shrub is obsessed with it.
Yes.
But Shrub can't say anything because he's playing volleyball.
Yes.
Rip. But yeah, that is the general theme of this region. It also has one of the main homelands of the dwarfs within the Stoneholds of Daran Bakan, as well as some of the more Middle Eastern style empires, such as the Emirate of Wasuria and the Sultanate of Pelagar. And you should be able to see the general concept I have of those 2 regions. The Pelagar isn't too in depth. It's mostly just here's my general theme. But Wasuria is
moment at
yeah.
least.
Wasuria is, think of it like the Assassin's Creed Order, and if you have played World of Darkness, think of it like the Assamite clan ruling over a shadow government.
Oh dear.
Yeah, it's very Middle Eastern influenced, but it's also vampire dark rulers. It's kind of like I don't remember the name of this Ravenloft realm, but it's kind of like the realm that's akin to the Middle East in that setting. A lot of these southern regions are closely tied to a more traditional medieval setting in terms of certain facets where they are less influenced by Roman mythology and the like, such as Empire of Borussia, which is closer tied to Transylvania. It is a horror region. It's ruled by a despotic government. It's, one of those things. While Kingdoms of Daravonia is closer tied to a bunch of groupings of loosely held together city-states and smaller kingdoms. Essentially, think of it like High Rock from Elder Scrolls, where it's a bunch of warring smaller kingdoms. And then there's the Chosen Empire of Eldiria, which is basically the main homeland of the Dragonborn of the region. It is a country almost entirely inhabited by Dragonborn. It is dedicated to the dragon gods. They are one of the few bastions of order within the southern half of Hakuda, compared to, despotism, which is, it is orderly, but it's also not good orderly. And then there's the chaos that is the many warring kingdoms of Daravonia. And then east of the mountains, you have the lands that have been slammed by wild magic. They're kin to the Rift, but less crazy.
Yeah.
Like they're
There's
certainly
more-
crazy, but you're not really gonna see like talking plants.
To it.
Actually, you could see
So-
talking plants because they are plant people.
So long as they don't ask me to eat them, I'm good.
It will not
Please, no.
happen. It will not happen unless something
It is
crazy
less
happens.
Nonsensical.
But yeah,
It is less nonsensical.
Indeed.
But it's still kind of nonsensical.
it's more of a environmental hazard and less of a people that are crazy. That region's crazy.
Yeah.
It shouldn't happen until it does.
Exactly.
Where do the chicken nugget people live?
They don't.
Oh, okay. They're all eating.
My tummy.
If they did exist at one point, they have long since died out.
Yeah.
All the insane people ate them.
On the
They were
northern
drowned by the
side
dipping sauce people.
of Fukuda, you have the regions of Fierbol and Trundheim, as well as Brulund Isle. If you played Fable, Brulund Isle is very akin to the Balverine Island. I don't remember the name of it. It's like Witch something. But it's very akin to that, where it's a bit more Nordic influence, but still very Islander. So I think kind of like a mix of, I'd say, Sweden combined with what's the name of this nation? They do the haka dance. I don't remember their name.
New Zealand?
I mean,
The Maori.
yeah, Maori. Yeah. Yes. So Sweden, Maori, very similar. It's a mishmash. It's interesting. Anyways, Trondheim is a grouping of different smaller states. It has the mammoth people there. It also has some more Viking elements, lots of people, humanoids, and the like. They're I believe actually have a write-up for them, a basic one. Yes, I do, in the regional overview. So it goes into more detail there. But they're one of the ones I have fleshed out less, so that one's more open to working on for people who want to put in their own spin on things. Fierbol, I believe, is my Moon Elven kingdom within the realm on Hakuda. I do not remember what I put on it. Let me go check to see if I gave you guys anything, or it might just be open for work. Yep, it's open for work. So that one's, it's just Moon Elves. Other than that, it is free to work on as you see fit.
Define moon elves.
Moon Elves are a subrace of elves. So the world itself does not have the traditional high elf, wood elf, Eladrin, things like that. Those races, they're not native to this planet. Though you could technically be an Eladrin because they are native to the Feywild. What they do have would be Moon Elves, which are, if you are aware of the Dragon Prince, they're akin to that elven race, the Moon Elves there. Essentially, they have been blessed by the moon itself. They have the ability to hide in moonlight. They have certain mystical, innate magical properties due to the moonlight itself. They're very elemental focused. And I don't mean like elemental as in like fire or ice, or I mean more
They're
like
half werewolves.
they're primal. The opposite side of that is the Sun Elves, which are very much akin to the fire version of Moon Elves within the Dragon Prince. They are bastions of the sun. They hold the fire within their core. They can actually rebirth themselves, as many of them worship phoenixes. And through this worship, they have gained the ability, I don't remember the name of it, but essentially if they drop to 0, they can stand back up.
It's great. It's
yeah.
very useful.
It's very useful, yes. You then have the Death Elves, which are akin to the Drow, though they are not natively evil like Drow tend to be. They are very secretive, though, so most surfers are not aware of their presence. And then you have... Oh, I know the big thing with the Death Elves. They are pale-ass white skin. Unlike the Drow, which are, more ashen purple skin.
Okay.
Yeah.
Question,
Interesting.
Yes.
Is there anything going on in like the oceans with like tritons or anything like that?
Certainly. Most of the oceans I haven't done too much work in, so a lot of them will have freeform working of kingdoms and like. The rift up north of Lasholti is home to a massive army of, I believe it was Sawagan, who worship a kraken, which is currently in slumber. Do not use that information, JC, because they're in a game that's in Calabash. But overall, most regions don't have too much work done with the water regions, as I've been planning on working on a Underdark and Ocean map that I can then start placing regions in and start naming people and like. That said,
Woo.
the Stormlands does have 2 nations listed. I do not remember their names off the top of my head, but if you go to the Stormlands, you can actually just click on the Stormlands and it'll link you there to the regional document. One is more of a friendly underwater nation of Tritons and similar species such as the Quagoth, not the Quagoth, those are the bear folk, the Quinian, which are the shark folk. They live within the heart of the Stormlands, so just in the center here. And to the southern border, you have the more hostile races of Sawagan and Lokathas, which are raiders who tend to prevent most of the trade between. Oop, did not mean to click that. Most of the trade between Natan, the Confederacy, and the frontier of Shabos. So this whole stretch of land from this rift down here up north to the Stormlands is fairly inhospitable to water-based travel, which is why the Confederacy is finally pushing eastward because they now have air travel.
So on the eastern continent, like does that volcano have another volcano inside of it?
It does, yes.
That's really cool. So that is all I have to ask.
Mm-hmm. Yep, that is the Dying Lands.
Volcanoception. I love it.
Yeah.
Looks like an eye.
Definitely. It's very much like Mount Doom. Yeah. Beyond that, you do have the 4th type of elves, which are, I believe I call them wild elves, but they are a bit more natural born. They are blessed by the plants themselves, kind of like a mix of a plant race and elf, where much of their form is of like green, fibery skin, so it's a bit more leaf-like. They tend to have vines or leaves for hair, very much more in tune with nature. They tend to have certain abilities of greater speed, ability to blend in with the native plants' lives around them. So, yeah. My dwarves and elves in this region, in this world, tend to be closely tied to nature itself. Hence the, sun, moon, wild elf, plus the death elves, which are closely tied with, hence the name death. Then you have the dwarfs, which are tied to the 2 different types of stone, molten stone and hard stone. So you have magma and stone dwarfs. Magma are a bit more akin to the surface dwarfs. They tend to work forges. They're closer to the traditional style of mountain dwarfs. You then have the stone dwarfs, which are closer to the Derdagar. Though, again, they're not like overtly evil. Any race here is not just by its nature evil. Because in the world itself, alignment for anything that's not an outsider is not set in stone. It is something that is, it's something that changes your very being. It's your motivations. It's your own moral compass. It's my take on alignment is that your actions determine your alignment. Your alignment does not determine your actions, unless you're an outsider. So, just overarching
By outsider, you specifically mean like demons,
fiends,
angels.
celestials,
Okay,
elementals, things that are innately tied to certain spheres of influence.
Okay.
Yeah, so I get a feel of like how warlocks work. What sort of patrons would be normal in like this world full of warlocks?
So patrons themselves, those are ones that I've had. I haven't had too many warlocks actually go in depth with their patrons, so I haven't done too much work on them. But overall, patrons themselves are free to work on, because I do have a few already made. Let me go grab that list. I have the warlocks definitely need to be in depth. I have a patron known as the Tinkerer, which is in my Sunday group. They are an inevitable, which is a race of outsiders heavily tied to the ideals of law. They are construct creations formed by the overdeities to balance the world itself. Very much a what's the word for it? A keeper of the cosmos laws of the cosmos. Horrible wording. Anyways, cosmic. Yes, thank you. Cosmic laws of the universe. They are. Some are assassins who tend to slam into people who break these cosmic laws. Some are more guardians or harbingers. Some, like the Tinkerer, are exiles who have broken free of their orders malfunctioning in a way. As they are constructs, they can indeed malfunction. The Tinkerer himself was the patron of the Confederacy before its turn away from him. I don't want to give too much away from them due to the fact that I have players who are currently dealing with them.
It's all good.
Yeah, been for a bit if you want me to.
I think for the Tinkerer, just so we don't spend too much time, it's fine. If people want to go in more depth, I'm happy to go in more depth on and like a personal one-to-one call or like a group call. But just because I have a few other patrons to go through. I also have another patron. Let me go grab that list. Can't remember their name. NPCs, special patrons. Here we go. I have another patron known as the Ashen Lady. She is a badass version of Little Red Riding Hood. She is a lycanthrope hunter. She is she is the patron of the Draconis Legion within Kalbesh, who, if you are in deep with their actual inner circle, they're a bit more akin to the Brotherhood of Skyrim, where they actually have werewolves in their higher not werewolves. They have werewolf hunters in their higher echelons of their ranking.
Sorry, is that hunter of lycanthropes?
Yeah.
Or the other way around?
Hunters of lycanthropes. I might be mixing up the name.
Kind of a mix of the companions and the Silver Hand is what I'm hearing.
Yeah. It is the Brotherhood of the Silver Hand, right? It's not just Silver Hand.
I don't know. I haven't played through that questline in Skyrim in probably about 6-7 years.
Well, they're akin to the Silver Hand. They have certain workings where they actually are fully specialized in hunting and rooting out the curse. That said, they're less malicious than the Silver Hand. They will attempt to cure the curse, but they will hunt down those beasts who are unwilling to or prefer the hunt.
Okay. How does that impact, like, because I assume not all lycanthropes are like the traditional werewolf of when they turn, they just murder a bunch of people.
Correct. You have afflicted lycanthropes, which are of that nature, where it hits the full moon, they will turn, and their alignment switches to evil, and it is an enforced alignment, where they will kill things. They are more animalistic in that nature. And then there's the natural-born lycanthropes. Those ones tend to be more in control of their powers. They can willingly shift whenever they see fit, even during a new moon. These ones tend to keep their own sanity. They don't have to change alignment when they do shift, though some do tend to have issues during a full moon.
Okay. I assume your Silver Hand peoples mostly go after the afflicted rather than the natural born?
Yes, they mostly go after the afflicted. They do sometimes hunt the natural born, but that is a rare case, such as if the pack itself has turned to attack the people of Kalbesh.
Yeah.
Kydron has one moon or two?
Kydron has one moon.
Okay.
Yeah. Does not have a blood moon.
Fuck the blood moon.
Yep. I then have two other patrons that I currently have some information on. One is a Khazalean. They are a celestial, a angel of the Seven Mounting Heavens of Celestia. They were the patron of one of my players in my Sunday group. They are a fiery spirit, a guardian. I actually have a huge write-up of them. I just have to go and find it because it's not something I had on the World Anvil. I had it on personal messages between the person as they asked me a lot of questions about them. But essentially, they are a gatekeeper. They control certain functions within the planes of existence and act as a guardian to this plane. You then have, this is a bit of a name, I'm probably going to mispronounce it, but you then have Abdernu El Kawaya Al Jarathi, translated into the one that speaks. They are a jinn, a genie. They are the patron of, well, their patronage is a little interesting. They offer wishes, and through the wish granting power that they have, they can sap the strength of those that accept the wish. Most of their tasks tend to be upon getting others to make bad deals, to accept the gifts given to them by the one that speaks. Those
Traditional genie.
Traditional genie, yes. They're very traditional genie. But they can provide certain functions of a more friendly nature, especially if one acquires an item which is bound to them. Because through this item they can use, for example, a genie's lamp to summon them, and that wish, for the most part, will not be fucked with.
For the most part.
For the most part. They have some wiggle room, but it's not, they're gonna fuck with you. It's more of like, they can fuck with you, but they have to think about it.
They have to figure out how they're gonna fuck with you.
Yeah. But those are the different patrons I have. I can post their handout art, although I will need to change it and get official art made for them. But just slam these guys down for you.
Clown thing isn't a patron.
The clown, he is a patron, but I didn't have a lot of information written down for him, as that was mostly conversations in voice that me and Artie had. But these are the pictures of those patrons: the Tinkerer, the one that speaks, the Khazalayan, and then the Ashen Lady, hood down and hood up. But those are the patrons I currently have in existence that are a bit more fleshed out for this planet. You're free to make your own. They can be in depth. They can be fairly away from things. Most patrons tend to be a bit more active than deities in the life of their servants. So you do have more wiggle room there in terms of what influence they want to push on the people who they can, influence and the like with that. But overall, patrons haven't been a lot of my my focus in work, so you have a lot of wiggle room to work on them. Let's see here. Going to the middle continent, you have Shabos. That is very much like a new world, so like Americas. It has the frontier, which is essentially cowboy land. That is the Confederate frontier, the colonies of the Fuentendrone Confederacy. South of that is the colonies of Veet, which has broken free. Think of it kind of like the American colonies that broke free from Britain, though less friendly. They are very much a hive of scum and villainy, not really a law-filled land.
They are a free port in the Caribbean.
Yeah.
So more like bandits in a way, or no?
Man, he's so America.
I did not fully hear what you just said.
Like bandits, or like kind of more of a like I guess criminal location.
Yeah, definitely a hive of criminals. This meeting isn't just lore talk. I'm mostly giving an overview. we do have the overview sheet. I just want people to get an idea of what regions are about, so we can start deciding which regions we should focus on, which countries we should focus on. But yeah, most of these regions themselves are fairly. I do have basic concepts listed on the regional overview, but they are more akin to like native tribes, regions a bit more closely tuned to nature itself, so like druids of the north within the realm of Hennes. The continent itself does have dinosaurs as one of its major fauna, so you'll find raptors and tyrannosauruses to the north, especially on the Isle of Pharazia. But overall, it's fairly tribalistic, being invaded by the the colonies of the Confederacy. So very much a Wild West invasion theme.
Could you remind me which faction you said had firearms?
That'd be the Fwindin Confederacy. I tend to just call them Fwindin.
So are they bringing those into the New World setting?
They are. Yeah. They do tend to keep their firearms fairly restricted in terms of how to recreate them. So rebuilding a firearm has a higher DC. So it's not just, oh, I found a musket, I'm just going to make this myself now. It will take time. And if they have any of their technology stolen, so not sold in a traditional way, they do tend to send assassins. So they are very protected of their technology. But
crabs with guns.
Yeah, I mean, crabs with guns could happen. There are some lobster folk.
Yes,
And what
I
you're
saw
saying
them.
is we could have a true cowboy setting.
Yes. They also have lightning rails, which are trains. So train robberies do exist. There's actually one being currently built within the frontier. It's trying to connect the northern section to the southern section to hopefully establish trade and try to get those scums of villainy a bit more on the up and up. But, we'll see how it goes. They're not going to, probably. But it's fine. They're building a train anyways.
We're building a train.
To be stolen
We're just giving the train some fucking... We're just giving the villains something to target so we know where they are.
It's true. But overall, that is the general theme of Shabos. It's, Wild West frontier, native lands being invaded. The western continent of Lasholti, this is a bit more of a traditional high fantasy setting with realms dedicated to certain races. So the north, you have Empire of Arendelle, which is the Moon Elven Kingdom. They used to rule most of the northern section of Lasholti and have been invaded by Calabash many times over massive war and hostilities between these two nations, though they're currently technically at peace. We'll see how it goes. The campaign I run today is dealing with that peace, so, we'll see. The western region of the Free Marches used to be part of Calabash, but broke free and have since turned into a conglomerate of free city-states. Think Kirkwall from Dragon Age, if you're aware of that. Just a bunch of free city-states that tend to prefer trade over war. South of them is the Mahaj Darathi Syndicate, also just Mahaj Darath. They are a nation of Loxodon, elephant folk, not mammoth folk like some of the other regions. Also a bit closer to, I would say, like a high palace sultanate kingdoms, empires with more tribalistic lands to the south, bit more akin to I don't remember the name of this, but Indian empires with some of the smaller tribes of India. And the larger jungle in the center there tends to be home to much of the more wild beast folks and plant folks, as well as some of the more interesting moth and parrot and butterfly people. In the wildlands, the large canyon between those two mountains, that is the orcish and beast folk homeland of like gnolls, goblins, orcs, trolls, ogres, things of that nature. That is the main kingdom of them. Think of it like the Orsinium from Elder Scrolls. It is them attempting to build a foothold, but have been raided by Calabash. There's been plenty of animosity between the two. So, as you know, they might be trying to turn another leaf, but they also might not be. We'll see how it goes. It's kind of important to the Sunday game as well. So, east of the border there on the mountain, we have the Realms of Natan. That's the Sun Elven Kingdom. Very much worshippers of phoenixes. They have many idols and dedications to phoenixes, tend to favor patrons over deities themselves. Though I do think I gave them a deity. I'd have to look at their notes specifically, but I can do that later. They are akin to the Aztec Empire, if you're wanting to get some themes with them. Though obviously their sacrifice is meant to rebirth them through the rites that they have. They have a special ritual that essentially, I can't remember the name of this spell. Rebirths them, changes their race. That spell.
Reincarnation.
Reincarnation. Yes.
Yeah.
That's their whole thing. That's their shtick.
Also, I do agree with Sack. All I'm hearing is cats. This is where the cats are.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just a clarification question on that reincarnation. Is it like a controlled reincarnation? Where they can choose the race they become, or is it randomized?
Depends on how they do the ritual. It can be true.
Alright, cool.
Yeah, many of the emperors within that realm tend to reincarnate into another form of themselves, essentially. Or into a phoenix, if they have passed many of their tests and trials. Karakos Alliance, that is a grouping of larger kingdoms, but smaller in the overarching thing, because it's like, I think, 4 or 5 kingdoms in that region, but I don't really have a lot of information for them. They're just more of a standard fantasy setting. Calabash itself, standard fantasy, humans, tends to have a lot of alliances with dwarfs. They are very much in tune with music. They're a nation of bards. And then you have the Sarkis League, that is the realm of lizard folk and other amphibious and reptilian races. That is their whole kingdom. Think of it like Black Marsh.
Yes.
And, yeah.
What I want to say is, so the standard fantasy zones are right next to the Confederacy, which is kind of its antithesis. How does that work out?
So, with that, they actually have only recently gained the huge industrial increase. So, their changes are starting to affect the Karakos Alliance and the Realms of Natan. But it is overall kind of like, think of it like, I'd say, France being still in like, the 1500s, for example, and then Britain's just within 10 years or so suddenly jumping to like the 1800s. It's pretty drastic, and there's a lot of chaos and concern going on within the neighboring regions, but it's still something that they're dealing with.
Oh god, they've discovered industry. Oh shit. Oh fuck. No.
Yeah.
Okay, so you can still have those standard fantasy stories, and you don't have to.
Yeah.
So something similar to like the Three Musketeers, where it's still that era of swords, daggers, but you have the single shot like musket and.
Yeah, definitely like that. They would have access to some of the weaker firearms, the archaic firearms. I have listed them in the book, but they are more akin to that style of play. Yeah.
So follow-up question, which regions, if any, are entirely untouched by that technology?
That would be Barud. That's the southern continent. They are very much the Vikings style of the realm. They have different what's the word for it? Can't think of the word. My mind's blanking. I have some of them listed on the regional overview. Some of them I haven't really worked on, but overall they are the nation that has been least influenced by the northern nations, though they have raided the northern nations for some of these countries.
Now, just saying, Viking with a shotgun?
I mean, it could happen. Would be interesting.
That'd be a big turn.
Yeah, Barud is actually the continent I've done the least work on. So if you guys are interested in a completely fresh continent, that would be the one to go for. But overall, we should choose 2 continents, and then we should choose between 2 and 5 countries each continent, and that should be our focus going forward.
I think, personally speaking, the number of countries we pick should probably be about 3, because that gives room to work with, but it's not too much stuff to like actually have to deal with. It's only 6 countries total, so.
I have a question. Once the living world opens up, what is the plan for all of these countries? Do we want all of them to be playable in, or is there going to be a limit, or how do we want it to work?
So this current setup is to get the initial, as Pi suggested, let's go with that for right now, initial 6 countries. Those are the playable regions that they can go in. Anything outside of that, think of it kind of like Skyrim, where there's the borders, like, you can't go this way, it's a play area.
Well, from my personal experience with a lot of this, if you're doing a living world, you kind of don't have to have a ton of countries to begin with, so long as the countries are more open-ended and people can kind of do a lot of what they want. Like, I don't know, I kind of blanked out listening to a lot of the lore here, because a lot of it is just, this is a lot.
It's a lot, yeah. I was just giving an overview. It's fair, totally fair.
But is there a country that is unoccupied by a civilization?
So there are peoples in all regions. There's not actually a Grey March or a West March region, but they do have regions that don't actually have any countries in them. So, like the island down to the south here, if you guys can see my mouse pointer, that isn't really occupied by a nation. Much of the Amun-Ra expanse doesn't actually have any solid civilization.
So the reason I bring this up is because usually when it comes to living worlds, you want to give the players a lot of power, and this would mean allowing them to establish their own nation would probably be something you want. And they can't really do that in a place that already has a lot of civilizations and nations, because that is going to require a whole lot of political intrigue, a lot of other planning stuff, and might be a bit of a nightmare, especially for the server that's just opening up.
Yeah. Well, I think the big thing here is, while I do have regions marked territory, not all this territory is easily controlled. And some of it might be even granted. So, for example, the Republic of Lentis, that is a huge territory that they have to control. They might not be able to control certain regions of it, so perhaps the southern border down here is essentially their borderlands, and they might say, akin to like Kingmaker in the Adventure Path, if you've read that or played that, where they're like, hey, I'll grant you a barony if you can tame this land. So those do exist. It's just, overall, these are the regions, so I can keep the general culture marked.
Yeah, I akin it to how medieval kingdoms functioned, in that all of this land is mine, but all I really care about patrolling is like roads between major cities. That's where my army patrols and keeps the peace. Everyone else is kind of, if they pay their taxes, I give a shit, but other than that,
Yeah. So then my suggestion is having at least one country that is part of the playable land that is almost entirely unoccupied. That way players have an area to kind of settle down without any worry of any barony or kingdom or anything of that sort. Because some players might want to do that.
Can't we, for example, just start with
Establishing countries is higher level stuff, not something we need to worry about right now.
Can't we?
I mean,
Can we just start with the Hikuda continent as like the regions that we're gonna play in, and have the other ones, especially the the Confederacy country to be like something that's coming, and then we can roll like and we can play it as introduced to like modern technology as we go.
Yeah, that's definitely something we can
one
do.
Continent and expand to others.
I want to do 2 continents right now, just so if a DM wants to play, but they're like, for example, a region's head, they can't actually play a character in their region. This way, we can have them play in the opposite region.
Well, the idea that I was talking about for that when I said this like 2 weeks ago was more so it would be country based as opposed to region, like entire continent based. Because how many continents do we have?
There's 4 continents.
That's not a lot for like different regions for DMs to control. And also those are pretty broad as well, considering they contain each like 10 countries.
Yeah, the main thing here, why I'm saying it's if your DM is, for example, your DM head of Kalbesh, you're technically a DM of Lasholti, which means you can't be a player in any of those regions because your actions in Eredil could affect Kalbesh, which is your region. That way, you are a region head, but you're not a continent head.
Well, we could make it so they can't affect any regions that are adjacent. That might be better, instead of having to lock them out in the entire continent altogether.
Well, the problem with that is the idea was that we have the 2 continents, and then we pick 3 countries within those continents that are ideally adjacent to each other, so that we can like more easily coordinate and deal with effects.
What I'm suggesting here is because the problem about this is when we have to think of the logistics of all this. Once this living world comes out and we have these 2 different continents with 6 countries between them, that's a lot of land to cover. A lot of land to cover, considering these continents are going to be probably a few days of travel apart each. We're going to be having this travel bot or whatever travel system we use that is completely fresh and not really having been tested, because the only way we can test it is through the living world apparatus. That might break in half if we have such a giant area of land, you know?
So
we
the
might want to
big
limit it
thing
to
there
one
is there is still teleportation effects. The world itself is littered with way shrines, which function the same as Diablo 2 way shrines, where you can just go to it and teleport to another one you've been to.
It's kind of like what they did in Elder Scrolls Online, where you discovered a way shrine, you can now teleport there whenever you want.
Yeah, I do get that. I'm
So-
concerned because it might be too much content.
Yeah, travel. Yeah, travel is certainly a concern. But overall, I think I'll put this to you guys. Overall, do you guys think it'd be better to have 2 different continents? That way, you can freely do whatever you want in one, or be limited to just one continent, but being unable to do anything that would really, for those who are actually region heads, to be clear, be unable to do anything in the region you're playing in that would affect the region you're the lead of.
Well, so I also wanted to have another caveat with. Oh, sorry. I'll let you go.
Well, I was just going to say, well, if we are going to have 2 continents, it'd be best to center them around the kind of main points of culture and history. So, for instance, Kuta, probably the center would be the barony of Vizaya. As much as people might want to try to, focus more on like other regions that are far away, it seems like Kalbesh and Vizaya are 2 of the center focal points of the stories of those 2 giant continents. Of course, that's if we pick Hakuta and the Sholti. The Sholti. And then maybe we throw in, the Imperium, Helgar, and Rayla, as they are the adjacent countries. Pretty much anything that would directly affect these center points and anything that is pretty much going to affect it in general. That's kind of more or less my 2 cents, because if we start like saying, okay, we pick Hakuta, but we're playing the Golden Marches, the Emirate of Wasuria, and then the Moon Elf Kingdom, there's going to be no interaction between the players of those areas. They're just too far apart.
Yeah.
It's going to be just a mess.
The regions we choose definitely should border each other. That way people can travel between them with ease.
So, if I may.
Go ahead.
Going off what Chris was saying, and kind of a sidetrack, I did join the call game, so upon regions of this had already been talked about. But do we have a plan for overarching story?
Not at the moment. That we need to choose the region first, then we can start doing overarching plot.
Well, one suggestion, because having started with X amount of countries and all that can work. One idea that hasn't been discussed here is starting with hold on, I'm sorry. Dogs in the background. One idea starting with one region and having all players focus there and going out from there.
Yeah, I was actually going to suggest something pretty similar to that. If you want me to speak a little bit on it.
Go ahead.
Okay. My suggestion was we have one region or one area that is more fleshed out than all the others, and every other region, like every single other region, be available but not fully fleshed out yet. Like you can go there. There's mostly like pieced together lore, but nothing like overarching happening over there yet. So players
wait a
can
minute.
travel from place to place.
Wait a minute. In terms of being fleshed out, Nerp already mentioned some of these are more developed than others. For the ones that are most developed, like what's available for them already?
What do you mean by what's available?
Okay, so for the most developed, you said Barud is least developed, but for the ones that are most developed, like what material is this? Like in the games, in your head, written down? What's available?
So, in terms of the most developed, so for example, Golden Marches, that one has a country write-up. That one gives you a base overview of what the country is about, what faiths they follow, what generally the terrain is like, things of that nature. That is what I mean by developed, where it has an overarching view of that region that can be used to push off into more intricate details. So, for example, if you want to build a city in the Golden Marches, you could. And that would be something that you could work on as lore. If we go into something that I had one of the most worked on, which is Calabash, because I've been working on this one the longest, most of the cities of Calabash have already been formed. Any major city is already placed. You wouldn't be able to build a city in this country, but you could build a village or a smaller hamlet or a thorp, no problem. So there is some restrictions in terms of the most worked on. For most of these, you could work on certain things like, oh, this city particular might be focused on this type of trade. That'd be fine too. It's just the names and the locations for core cities are established, and the leadership tends to be established too. So like the city of Crescendo on the northwestern coast over here, that city there is ruled by House Malachi, for example. That wouldn't be something you could change.
So there are write-ups for cities, and are there maps even available for that region?
So there is a map. It's on Map Tools. I'll have to transfer it to here. I also have a few maps of city maps. But overall, Calabash, since it was a region that I was working on as a game, most of the notes are in Map Tools, essentially, or in certain smaller documents that I use for missions. Essentially,
so you just need to write them all up.
Yeah. Okay. Anything that is not a core city, though, tends to be things that you guys can use freely. I did give a write-up for one of the smaller villages down south here called Elder's Crest. But that is on World Anvil, but for the most part, they are things more in my own personal notes rather than openly available.
My suggestion for this entire thing is that we don't restrict things to different regions or continents. We let players explore the entire world, and we have a handful of places that have been developed and focus on development. Places that are probably more civilized, actually having major cities and maybe some overarching goals and quests to them. Maybe, like we were talking about, between like 4 and 7 different places. And all the rest of the regions are either have small bits about them or alternatively are completely empty. And the reason for this is we want DMs to have a lot of freedom when it comes to running things in some of the other places. If we have absolutely every region written up and lore-wise, it's going to mean that DMs are going to have you pretty restricted when it comes to what they can run in certain places. Like a DM might go, hey, can I run demons here? And they're like, and you go, well, no, demons wouldn't exist in this land because of this, this, and this. And then the DM just has to go wander off to another region to try and do that. That might be more annoying. So we should have regions that are just designated as this place won't ever have overarching lore. This place will just kind of be a free-form area and have a few of those places around.
I really don't like that, honestly.
I disagree on the assertion that having written up lore will restrict what DMs can do.
With the world itself, it is not as restricted as the previous Living World, where you just can't use demons. There are cults you can have. You can, like, for example, if we go to, let's go to a region that's completely anti-demon. If you go to Rayla, the region of, like, high celestials and whatnot, you could totally have a cult that worships the devil. And that cult can be summoning devils. No problem. Mm-hmm. It's not something that you would generally find most common, but as a DM, you could have a smaller adventure that is dealing with, like, imp summoners and, like, maybe a few, I know these are demons, but maybe a few dretches as well.
Yeah, this is kind of the point I'm trying to get at, is that if we require the DMs to read the lore, literally all of the lore of the region they're in, or they're working in, and the region surrounding it, when a lot of DMs aren't going to be region tied, they're going to be just running stuff where they can or where they want to, then that's going to make it so a lot of DMs have to sit down for hours just making a small, like, encounter, because they have to double check and make sure every single thing they're doing isn't against any bits of lore, and that might be more annoying for some DMs.
As long as you, like, set your quest line to actually make sense and not be like, oh, I want to run demons, lol.
So
You'll
sure, but
so going with that, we actually had a system in the previous one that worked okay with the lack of lore, but with lore that we actually have, it will work much more appropriately. That's not the right word, but it works for me. The way that we did it previously is that you had your write-ups, you can make things you want, no problem, all that good stuff, but it went through someone who was focused in knowing the lore. Essentially, you'd be going to your region's head, who would be the knowledgeable person, or their assistants. And those would tell you if that is something that would break the lore. You don't have to read all the lore information. You don't have to do all that stuff as an individual DM. You just have to know about the overarching region itself. And maybe if you're doing it in an established city, you'd also read that city's lore. That'd be the gist of what you'd actually have to read as a random DM. If you're a region head, you should be fleshed out in that region's lore. Yeah. But that's kind of the limit there.
Well, yeah, this is kind of what I'm getting at. What I'm saying, there should be at least one region where there isn't a fully established lore, so that DMs can run more freeform stuff there. Because if we have an entire world where DMs have to consult a person in order to actually get their quest run, and there may actually be a situation where someone's quest literally cannot be run anywhere, even if it doesn't affect things in a major way. It's just because the lore of the world won't fit it, and then they're just sit there sulking, unable to run it. We should have at least one place where that's kind of okay, at least one part of the world.
I think that's fine, but it's important to remember that different DMs have different interests. Like, I, for one, I'm not interested in creating cities at all. So having cities pre-made, ready to go would be a huge boon for me. And I'm sure there are, different DMs who want to do different things.
Yeah. I think overall, there is... you go ahead.
No, I just wanted to bring up one thing. I get what Chris is saying. I'm going to go in the opposite direction really quick. Giving DMs freedom is great. Should do it. Let them control their regions. However, I do think there is the potential of a problem where if we have too many people creating too many unconnected things too early, it will contradict with each other.
Oh yeah, this is kind of why I'm getting at why there should be a region for all of this to be contained in. That way, at least one, because the point I was trying to get to is that stuff that happens in that region maybe there's some kind of anomaly in that region that basically says, hey, anything that happens here doesn't really affect the things around it.
No, I mean that right there can just be the Almond Ray expanse then. Wild magic.
Yeah.
I wouldn't even go that far. But what I would suggest, at least in the beginning, is we have let the players, they can be from anywhere. Their character can be from whatever country or whatever thing like that. But at least in the beginning of the living world, give them you're on this region to investigate X or Y. And you can have all these different missions and like that. And then it can eventually spread out from there as the other DMs are ready with their regions.
I mean, my thing about Chris's point is I think we should start off with like actual more rules that go into freedom later, like a little bit more order, then go into the loose tied structure. That's why
I can understand
the
that from
idea of like focusing on more of the kind of more pre-established, and then maybe like have some of the higher up levels that the first people to reach tier 2 in like the barony of Vizaya, suddenly there's a quest posting for a kind of like the quest line of like I don't know Galen's Gate, where hey, settlement building campaign idea, and now that goes down there, and voila, the Aruni Expanse is now unlocked for the whole living world, and now the more player driven mechanics can be introduced.
I mean, I do get that. Yeah.
Yeah, just later on, because I feel like starting off with pretty much everyone, I think starting at level like 1.
Yeah.
Having it being a, more or less a player-driven campaign, or a player-driven area, may not be the best, as there's going to be things that happen. People are going to level faster than others, and sometimes they'll just prey on the weak and stuff, and then
so that's actually
people are
something I
just
think
going to leave and be
Yeah, we talked about this 2 weeks ago, the whole idea of evil PCs and crime, and we
Which
came
is
to
fine.
the decision. We came to the decision that that's okay because there's crime and punishment for it. So that's kind of a null issue at this point. We're going to work
I
on
know,
a system
but
for
like,
that.
if we're going to a region that's less developed, there is no punishment. There's no crime and punishment. There is no overarching like.
So, I mean, it's kind of like if you as a player decide you're going to walk out into the woods and then another player character comes out and kills you. Yeah, there's no guards around, obviously. So player characters should be warned ahead of time, like, hey, don't go to regions unless you have a party of people and you're prepared, Don't just wander into random territories.
Yeah,
I feel like that's a common sense thing.
You say that, but that is
Players will be players.
At all in my experience, that is wrong,
It's-
sir.
It's definitely something that there should be something. But getting back to the main topic of where to start with the living world and everything, I like the idea of players being able to. There's a group over here and a group over here, and they can really be wherever they want to be. However, we should not start with that. We should start with some primary plotline in a region. The characters themselves can be from anywhere, but they've traveled here to start whatever story we like to tell. And then that expands outward to adjacent regions for whatever reasons.
Yeah,
That would let us control, at least early on, so it doesn't overwhelm.
I'm definitely with you there, especially with us being unsure of what we might be dealing with player-wise due to the whole transition. Starting off something smaller, especially with such a large world, would be more appropriate, I think.
Yeah, and my suggestion for this whole thing was going to be we pick 4 to 7 regions that are either close to each other or adjacent to each other, that are all both well developed in the lore and also places that could have overarching quest lines to them. and we pick those as our main ones, but every other region isn't locked off. They're all available to explore, but they're unknown to the players. In other words, they have to go out and actually explore those regions to determine what's there, and that might be dangerous. That way, we have a lot of time to actually develop the lore of those places as the players go out and explore them.
So,
this would also give DMs ample time to provide
resources.
So
That's hard to do when they're already civilization.
yeah, the big issue there is that would work 100% in a West March campaign where everything west of the Marquisate, for example, is just uncivilized land. That could work 100%. But with this world being fairly established, with nations being in most countries, it doesn't truly work. The only one that would really work for that would be the Amun-Re Expanse, as being the one region where they can, go and explore the new world.
I'm not saying it would be completely unknown what's there. It's more so that the player characters themselves would have to find, because we also have to pull a veil back here, and we can't just do one of two things. We can't just let the whole world be instantly playable and right off the bat. And we also can't restrict people to only play in certain regions, saying, "Oh, there's just an invisible wall here," because
We 100% can. We've done it before.
Yeah, we can.
I disagree with that heavily because the lore implications.
It's not about putting an invisible wall. This is a living world. Here are the missions that are available. If you want to just wander off in one direction,
fits the campaign, you need to make a new character.
If you wander off in one direction, sure you wander off. We'll get back to you when missions are available.
Yeah, but that's kind of what I'm saying is that we shouldn't just say, "Oh, you want to go on this road that is clearly established." No, you can't because that region's not made yet. We don't want to be like that because that is going to make players feel very weird about.
Honestly, having ran in Verum, this was never an issue. Like,
I understand.
Like, having played this, having run my own campaigns where my players are specifically set in Kalbesh, or specifically set in Vazia, or, specifically set in the Frontier, all those regions, the players don't really have an issue with being limited to their regions, although the Frontier have traveled to the Confederacy, so they have traveled a bit.
I do want to note something. My past experience with all this is I've run several different living worlds about that either didn't involve this at all and just had a massive open world, which resulted in a lot of lore inconsistencies, a lot of problems because it was just too much content. Yes, we have a lot of DMs that could be handled easier, but there still might be problems with there just being too much content, and I think we've discussed this already. And on the flip side, if you limit players too much and say there is another part of this world, there's a lot of other places, but you just can't go to. Like, if we release the map of Syrik, and people see all these cool places and they go, "I want to be in this region," and we tell them, "Nope, you can't be there for the next 2 years because we're still developing it."
We're all volunteers, and we must be able to tell players no. We can't.
I get that. But the part of this is we don't have to just say, "No, you can't go here," because it's still not completed. People can go to uncompleted regions and just interact with them loosely.
You can also just tell they go off and nothing happens, and they come back to where actually things are
At
happening.
least giving them the freedom to do it, instead of just saying you can't.
We also
There's
play with
no
maps.
content that way.
You're misconstruing no as in no because there's something there, and
No, because it's not where the story is focused.
yeah, and here's the thing.
But that sounds more like a West March than a living world then, if it's focusing the world.
I mean,
when it comes down to it, D&D is about telling the story. And yes, a living world is a much more open story. We're just recommending at the beginning. It
I know.
Be completely open. It's impossible.
I know that.
If people want to walk in random direction, they can, but that doesn't mean anything's going to happen.
I think overall, what we can do is I think we can say people can move across borders. Like, for example, if we are focused in 3 countries of Akuta, if they want to go south to Barud, they can do so. They're just retired or in hiatus, essentially. That would be our in-character reason of why they're not currently in region.
Yeah,
but it's not something for games.
Yeah, I'm completely okay with that because it gives players at least some freedom to explore the world, even if they themselves won't do anything. We could also say that when the time comes to actually release that region, all the players who have been retired there or all the players who were exploring there can now do a bunch of quests or something like that for that area because their characters were exploring it, something along those lines to make the world at least feel a little bit more like a living world and less like a West March where there's only 2 regions of focus and you cannot go outside those regions, you know? That's
That could be easily achievable with a downtime type thing. Like, if a player isn't interested in the story here and they want to go to X region, they quote retire their character and do the story moves over there.
Exactly.
And they get some benefits.
But I think overall, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. Carry on.
I was just going to explain that the way you originally said it, Chris, it sounded like the DMs were expected to cater to those players, which is why people.
Yeah, I do get that. I'm just afraid because on a lot of other servers they have fallen apart because they tried to bottleneck their players down one path. They tried to set them down one set of quest lines, and if the players protested and saying, "Why can't I do my own thing?" we just told them, "Well, then you can't quest."
Yeah,
I
totally get that concern. That is 100% my antithesis. I do not like that railroading issue. I think with our current size and with our testing out the system, being focused in regions, not an issue. Overall, though, I think for most part we all generally agree that having a few small regions and allowing them to, for example, retire or go on hiatus outside of the region, maybe give them a few lower tidbits if we so fit, that's fine. But we should decide on some regions. I still think we should do a split continents just because of the enhanced region play that we can provide. Specifically, going from a living world that was, I believe, 10 countries to 6, that is somewhat limiting in terms of the styles of play. I think the best choices for Hakuda would actually, I do like Vaziel a lot, but I think Alentis, Arlogus, and the Golden Marches as 3, because Golden Marches and Arlogus are fairly unique, and that would be kind of a huge draw. Morrowind itself was a huge draw. And then Alentis would provide those on the Eastern continent a more traditional style play. And for the Western side, I would go with Kalbesh, Arendil, and either the Free Marches, the Wildlands, or Mahaj Darathi, although we can also do Realms in Natan. All those are fairly unique realms besides the Free Marches, which is more traditional.
Quick recommendation: the groups of 3, 2 of them should be countries that are air quote hostile to each other. Maybe there's some conflict.
Arendil and Kalbesh.
The third region for each group of 3 should be some frontier wildland war. Sure, it's controlled by a country, but it's not as a what do you call it? Civilized.
Gotcha.
It's not colonized.
I can see that.
There's still not a wild region. In that area.
For that, I would say the best in Lasholti would actually be Arendil and Kalbesh for the hostile, or Kalbesh and the Wildlands for hostility, and then the Free Marches, because that is fairly open terrain with like city-states and the like. It's less of a fully established country.
I think my personal choices for the 2 regions, not necessarily the 3 countries with them, would be Lasholti and Hakuda, if only because they both have parts of them that are established, so we have lore that we can work off of that people can actually use. And no offense to the whole frontier thing in that, okay, there's guns here. Ignoring the fact that I just, as a personal standpoint, kind of dislike guns in D&D, but it helps us ease into that with people that may not be used to the idea. And we could have a later phase be more of now we're dealing with guns.
I think you were misconstruing what they said by frontier. They meant like a... go ahead.
No, I understand that. I think.
I don't mean guns. I also agree guns should be incredibly limited.
Yeah.
I'll be honest. the one country being way ahead of everyone else, I'd consider throwing that out, just to be honest, because it will people from those other areas. Tech level is more important than what people think.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to do it, it's very complicated. You have to be very careful. It might not be worth the effort, but that's just my opinion.
It's not too much of an issue right now, especially due to the current effects that will be going on in the campaigns I'm running. But overall, I get you. I definitely don't want to run one of our regions in the Confederacy or the frontier of the Confederacy, simply due to the level of tech that is involved there. At least not starting out. I do want to eventually allow it, but it's not something that we want to kick things off with.
Yeah, that's what I was basically leaning towards. Just we can get down to that later. And just start somewhere that's not that.
Yeah, if one of you guys could kick up a poll, that'd be excellent.
Yeah, I also want to
DLC.
I want to say something that Legacy has been saying in the chat for a little while now. The idea that we have quite a lot of time until this releases, right? We were probably like, isn't the release plan for like sometime next year or something?
Something like that, yeah.
Okay, then we have at least like maybe 5 months. I think reasonably, like, putting it like understandably we can get maybe 6 regions done is fine, but I honestly think with the massive team here and the fact that a lot of what you did was mostly solo and you got through quite a lot of it yourself, we can probably get more than 6 regions done in that time, but we should just focus on a few for now, and then say maybe 2 months from now we revisit this topic and go, all right, how done are those regions? Can we possibly add more, kind of deal?
Yeah, I mean, I'm fully with you in that regard. I'm just saying, for starting to play, we should limit it to a smaller number, just so we can focus our storylines in those regions. If people want to step up and do additional regions, I am open to going like up to 10, because I know we can. Our team size can handle 10.
Yeah, this is kind of going to the suggestion I had earlier with the whole world being able to be explored. If we manage to get all the regions done before the world releases, then the plan could be we have only a set few places that players can primarily role play in and do trade professions in, because that's going to be what most of the meat of the server is, people just milling about talking to each other, and that people can quest anywhere they want if we have all that done. Because there's not really any reason why we can't let people quest in every region if all of the region's lore is done.
Yeah, I mean, if all regions are done, I can totally see assistant DMs running the like random one-shot games in excess regions, but any story-based will need to be focused.
Yeah, exactly. That's kind of what I'm getting at.
So hold on. We have to accept some trade-offs when we choose to use maps in lieu of Theater of the Mind, right? I mean, the maps, if that's still what we're doing, I assume, then that necessarily limits where people can go.
Well, this is what I'm saying, is if we manage to have all of the lore established, if everything has been completed, then we can let players go out and explore some of the other regions, but they can't settle down on those regions. They can only settle down in a few regions while we set things up on the server. Because realistically, the reason why we want to limit these regions isn't so we limit the DMs. It's so we limit where the players are and where they're interacting. So we have less channels, less roles, less everything to worry about. Because logistically, there's not really any reason to restrict where DMs host stuff, you know, aside from just the lore, which, again.
I mean, if they want to make them... I mean, maybe I'm coming at this thinking of game sessions chiefly, and that's necessarily limited by the maps you have. And if the player wants to go to a map that you don't have, you either have to Theater of the Mind or just tell them they can't go there.
Well, yeah, this is what I'm kind of getting at. If we establish all the lore,
we just create the maps with map tools.
Huh?
Yeah, there's that.
Sorry, what?
Like using map tools and stuff.
We make our own maps.
Yeah.
Most of the DMs here.
And we also have cartographers.
Like, during a session, right? If the players want to go someplace you're not ready for, you can do it Theater of the Mind, or you can say next session.
You can do Theater of the Mind. You can say next session. We also we'll have a map library. I'm gonna be slamming all my maps into it that people can use. Most of them will be random encounter maps that you guys can use easily enough.
I do want to remind people this isn't going to be a session-based world where players have to be in sessions to interact with the world. So
you can also just say no.
Yeah, I mean, it's that, but also as a DM, if you yourself want to host something in the bottom right corner of the map where players aren't active in, you could put a quest down saying, hey, people in this city want to travel like 50 miles to this region to do a quest here. That way players can do that with a map you already have prepared, as opposed to the other way around where your players get to pick where their quest goes. It's mostly you'll be locking people into where their quests are. At least that's how I understand Living Worlds to work for the most part, you know?
For the most part, the region that they are in will be generally where they are locked for their missions, yes.
Yeah.
Just due to the travel time. That said, once they get, way shrines, they can start hopping around places easy enough. Generally, that's one of the reasons why I'm wanting this split between continents, is because you're not really going to have a way shrine between the two continents, so you won't really interact with the opposite continent.
Yeah, I can understand that. I'm just saying we don't want to limit ourselves planning wise. We want to have realistic expectations, sure. But
I 100% get you. I think this is just going over what we've already gone over, though. Essentially, make lore, focus our regions, run those regions. If we do happen to have things open, we can open things up more. But yeah, we should choose 3 regions. I believe someone posted a form that we should start a poll.
Yeah, JC posted a
Yeah, let's get that poll filled out.
Could we, and maybe one of these fits the bill. Oh, sorry, am I talking over someone?
No, it's fine. Good.
Does one of these places exclude firearms? You said Brood excludes firearms entirely.
Well,
are there any others that do?
Pretty much every region besides the Confederacy and the Frontier excludes firearms. Any firearm you would find outside of the Confederacy would be like a musket. You're not really going to find someone with a crazy powerful firearm unless they are specifically from the Confederacy and have traveled outwards, which is kind of why I also want to limit some of that, just so we don't have people using modern rifled firearms versus people wearing plated armor.
Real quick, JC, could you edit that form to make it so that way instead they're checking off countries? The primary reason for this is so that way we can look at all the form submissions and not have to discern things from a just a bunch of strings that people posted.
Yeah, I was making a copy of the thing, and then I was going to do it by country.
Next thing I want to talk about is admin stuff. As far as selecting, let's say we select the 3 regions. I'm assuming that you've already had people in mind for or maybe this could be a form that we make for people who wish to become region head or a head of an area.
Yeah, I'll be putting out a form for people.
Yeah, before any lore is made, we should make sure that we have a clear chain of command.
Indeed.
Before we actually start writing, except for in the freeform areas.
We do have writing documents listed there. No one's been marked as a lead, which once we have the region selected, we can start selecting the heads of the regions, as you're suggesting. And from there, things can start being confirmed, placed on the wiki, and the team can start working on perhaps missions and overarching plot in their given region.
I just want to make sure that people don't immediately start writing lore for the Moon Elf Kingdom, expecting to, 100%, have that being canon without it not being approved or I don't know. Just I want to make sure that people kind of know there's a structure that is going to be in place before we actually write lore.
Yeah.
And work together with the team.
Definitely should have. Oh yeah, sorry, my mic picks up my keyboard like no other.
That's fine.
Let me go and get you on that drive there. All right. But yeah. Once we have that folder all set up, we are the poll all set up, we are good to go in that regard. Overall, that's kind of what I have. Once we get the regions picked, we can start going over more in-depth discussions with those particular regions, as well as the heads. I know Legacy's been working on the reorganization document. So if you're wishing to help with that, we can get together and see about getting that all set up. But does anyone else have anything they want to go over? I go and get people on this drive.
Related to this? No.
Sorry, what?
I was saying related to this. No, I have questions about my game.
I see. You wish to discuss Sunday.
Yeah.
I see.
So one thing I noticed on the equipment document you shared was there were a couple different time units there. I think there were WH and MH units.
So WH stands for work hours. That would be time that cannot be adjusted through any means. Essentially, you have to wait that time. You have to spend the downtime days to craft that duration. And these are in hours. So every day you tend to have 8 hours that you can use. So one downtime day would be 8 hours of work. And then you have man hours, which is days that can be adjusted through feats and other things that adjust time. Essentially, you have your minimum required and then your addition that can be adjusted. So if something takes 20 work hours and 60 man hours, and you have a feat that reduces the time it takes you to craft something by half, you would be 20 work hours and 30 man hours. Total of 50 hours that you have to work on the item to make it.
Okay, and when there's one number in the table, which does that indicate?
When there is only one number in the table, it defaults to man hours, I believe. But let me go and do you have an example? Some of the regions might be outdated.
The ammo? I think the ammo for some of these had one number listed.
Yeah, some of them are outdated. So if you look at the goods and services, for example, comfort and shelter, that is outdated in terms of time. I had that built before I added in the work hour transition. Overall, if it doesn't have it listed for any gear, divide it by 4. So if it's like bathtub collapsible 12, that would be 3 work hours, 9 man hours. And that's just how you figure it out. If it just says 1 for like time 1, then it's 1 man hour.
Okay.
So my question in regards to all that is the civilian system going to be worked on soon or later, or how are we doing it? Because it did need to be fully updated because of the whole everything happening.
Yeah. So for the civilian system, that's something that we should work on. It definitely needs to have a meeting due to the changes in economy. I think that should be a meeting throughout the week, outside of the big old meeting.
Can I have a link to whatever crafting rules that you have? Nerp?
Yeah, I'll post it again in chat. 5E 919.
Okay.
You are?
Are there any flying vehicles?
Airships do exist.
They are very hard to make.
Restricted to the Confederacy?
It's restricted to Confederacy. They also have certain creatures that can fly in other regions that they use as aerial travel, but overall the only vehicle itself would be the airships of the Confederacy, which are exceedingly difficult to make.
Are the creatures regulated?
The creatures, most part, yeah. Let me go check my email, see people, because I saw someone said that they were waiting for a thing. Yep, I see 3 requesting access, giving access. Any other questions? Also, if you guys have something you want to discuss, or you don't want to forget about something, feel free to just put it in, do we have a Firehouse here? Yes, I do. Feel free to put it in Firehouse, and we can have that be our, we need to go over this. And, we can make sure to talk about it.
Yeah, for me, I wasn't around for the previous phase, so downtime days and all that I'm not familiar with. So
Yeah, so that is definitely a difference between my homebrew and Verum's homebrew. Downtime days in Verum was just, you had 2 different versions, downtime and crafting, and essentially it was 1 day per, so it wasn't super in-depth, but yeah, it's something to discuss for economy, but we should have a meeting scheduled for that, so we can discuss further and start adjusting the equipment guide for the future. Also, the poll is now good, so feel free to lap that up, and we'll go over the results of that next Sunday, so we can determine who's the head and whatnot. I'll be putting out a form probably tomorrow, sending it out to the Council Generals, just so people have an idea of if they have interest in being a region head. Once we have regions determined, we can discuss who wants to be region head. You can also put in the form your preference, and you can also put, if you do not get your preference, you can just decide not to be a region head. So, you know, I'll put those options in there for you guys, but expect that tomorrow. Anything else?
Maybe stuff for character creation for training.
See, I have a DM when somebody check it. Might be relevant. You know, on the drive? Try refreshing. I did see your request and give you access. Yeah. Regarding character creation, I do have a list on the World Anvil on how to make characters that I currently use. That one is certainly interesting to an extent.
Outside of the birth sign thing, can we use that like just straight up?
So that can definitely be used just straight up. Let me go grab it and link it to you guys, just so it's lap copy.
You gonna do point by?
Paste. Here is the link. So that's the character creation. That can be used. I think we should do some adjustments for this for the future. Specifically, we do need to change origins, because if every player in our game has a custom origin, that's gonna be a lot of work on us.
So if we took out origins, Destiny points, just so like the training people have something to use right off the bat for their games, would that?
I would keep Destiny for the training games, just so they can get used to the used to that system, but remove the origin feat. They can still gain the +2 ability score and the skill proficiency, but remove the benefit from it. I can use my action to cause myself to go on fire. You know, just remove that benefit of the origin.
Okay.
And we'll have to make some specifically for regions that we can use for people, like Verum had for like Dabrick and whatnot.
That'll give us a good baseline, so we can finally get that to them.
And go ahead, Pujo.
I had 2 questions.
Yes.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. One is I just think we should add a little addendum to the Destiny points to make it to where it's only like during campaigns or during like sessions, or is this something that a player could use out of like in text RP?
I would agree. It should only be used in mission. And the Destiny used in mission should only be usable, I would say, anything of lesser rank or above. So any minor missions, they're basically just random one-shots or things that an assistant GM can run. So that shouldn't be affected by Destiny, but anything above that, any like more story-focused missions should be affected from Destiny. But for training games, it's fine for them to use it and get used to it.
Alright. Second is time to talk about everyone's favorite religion. Is there like a fixed pantheon for the continents?
So at the moment, it is the Galarian Pantheon, which will be changed in the near future due to copyright issues, and I don't really want to deal with using another... I don't remember the word for it. Another person's property, essentially. I do actually have this plan for the Pantheon to be changed. I just need it to happen in-game. So people, if you have interest in making deities, feel free. I also have some deities of my own that I can blap down so people have an idea of them. At the moment, I already know of, let's see here, 5, 6, 7. I think I have 7 right now. 7 right now that I already have planned. Pretty sure it's 7. But overall, if you guys want to make deities, you can make your own deities and put them up, and we can go over them and see if we want to have them confirmed as a deity of the new pantheon.
I was just more or less asking just so that we have understanding. Is like, okay, so this pantheon's for the whole world. Okay, this pantheon's for this region, or this pantheon is for this.
Oh yeah. So currently,
I know
the
that Rayla is monotheistic, right?
yeah, Rayla's monotheistic. So currently, the entire world falls under the Galarian pantheon, which is the deity listings from Pathfinder's setting. So each different country might choose a specific deity for a monotheistic region, such as Rayla, or a grouping of deities for a polytheistic one. They are all drawn from this Galarian deity list, but that is the general idea, is that they will have specific deities tied to them. Everyone should expect. I don't believe Wanderer's in here, or Witch is in here. Sorry, so that's good there. But I don't believe they're in here, which is good for me because they're in the game this is going to be relevant to. All deities, also JC Duffin. I just realized you're in here too. All deities are going to fall. All the Galarian pantheon, they will be falling. They will not be relevant by the end of my Sunday campaign and midway through the first book, possibly the beginning of the second book of my Friday campaign. So deities will be just a godless realm, essentially, where patrons will start picking up the pace, and deities newly formed, newly birthed, will start gaining some semblance of power. So it will be kind of hectic. It will have some false churches, akin to like Dragonlance, if you've read that book, where they had the church that was totally not a religion, or not a real religion. Yeah, that is. I already had this planned, but now I have it planned a bit sooner because of the transition to a living world.
Okay. Just wanted to ask because there wasn't like that much info when I looked up.
Oh yeah.
Clerics and stuff that might want to play.
Yeah, if you want info on the deities that are currently available, the Galarian Pantheon, just type in Galarian deities, and that should get you, or deities Galarian, or deities Pathfinder, and that should get you to the list, and they have a decent write-up for each of the deity.
All right, cool. Just wanted to ask, and so I guess this is going to be a weird question. So will there be overarching stories of the possibility of deityship? It sounds weird.
Technically, that is a possibility, yes.
Okay, just want to get it out there.
So there are certain artifacts in the world that through their use, a player could become a deity. They're not easy to find. They're not easy to beat the challenge. It would certainly be a personal quest, but they do exist.
Have a deity.
Okay, and
a
should
demigod.
like I don't know. Okay.
Overall, if a player does have a personal goal of eventually becoming a deity, it would be very difficult for them to do so. It would require a lot of research, a lot of downtime, a lot of adventuring on their part, but it's possible, and it is something that could occur if they're dedicated enough. But as a deity, they couldn't actually, be a player character because, they're not able to go on missions.
So this is there like a created channel like Divinity Peer Review or something like that?
Yeah, we if there's not already a Divinity lab, I should build one, or one of my team can build one, so we can start discussing that. I would also like to get a Google Doc written up, just so people can have kind of like where we have the region sheet, just so we can go over ideas and work on teams and stuff. So yeah, Divinity team. There you go.
Alright, cool.
Yeah. I also don't really want to say too much about some of the deities that we'll be replacing due to story implications. But yeah, if individuals would like to discuss this, then know that you will be under a please do not tell my players.
Yeah.
Hey, JC, guess what?
Yeah, it's a please DA, yeah. But that's really the only thing that I have in terms of like don't tell people about is please don't talk about tell my players about stuff that's currently going on that I might tell you. I don't want them to accidentally metagame.
I mean, who all in here is to worry about? Me, Sean, and which?
Chrono. Yeah, Chrono too. And Sultan if they if you see them in like general chat or something. For Dr. Jund, your question about IRL gods, all of the IRL pantheons do exist. They are the pantheons of Syrik. They actually are the pantheons that had the giant god war that formed Syrik. They can be used, but not all of them. They're very much if you do use them, you have to ask me first because some of them might be dead. Because there was Apocalypse, and many of the good deities lost.
You're welcome.
Yes, you can thank JC for that. They caused it. Well, they and the team.
If anything, it was like really Ram's idea.
Thanks, JC.
I just helped it happen really badly.
But yeah, I also believe there's a document that was posted earlier that kind of goes over an overview of some important lore questions. I don't remember where that was posted, but if I can find it, I'll post it again so people can give it a look over and help out. I believe that does discuss the Apocalypse a little bit. So yeah. Overall, any other questions?
Have we run a poll for interest in administrative stuff like divinity, crafting, etc. for the new phase?
Not at the moment, but it's something I can easily set up. Essentially, I would just take the new interest sheet for aspirants and just convert it for current people.
Didn't we have a form we went out? The interest form or application form or something like 2 weeks ago?
You know, there was that, and I completely forgot about that. Yes, we have that, and there was responses to it. I should go look at my that. Completely forgot. Yeah, Shrub built it.
Yeah, I remember some forms. I can't remember what happened when.
Mm-hmm. Fortunately,
forms specifically go out about all the positions.
Yeah,
so,
yeah. I'll have to go give that a look over probably Monday. Just so I don't forget, I'm gonna put this in Firehouse because I know me and I'm gonna forget. At me. Remember, I'm gonna mute myself so you don't hear the tappy.
It's a very soothing typing.
It might inform, because I don't know what the responses were. It might inform what we're able to do.
Yeah, yeah. I'll go over that tomorrow. I would say tonight, but I'm gonna be a busy banana.
Okay.
But there we go. I've marked it as unread, so I do not forget about it, and I'm going to be annoyed until I read it. So, there we go.
How goes the reformation of the mod team? Is that still under progress?
From the looks of it, you guys are all fairly set up in your current organizations. We definitely need more moderators, though, in Living World side of things. But yeah, no.
I thought you and Legacy were planning on doing a whole restructuring shebang with the.
Well, we're still working on that, but yeah, at the moment we have a solid thing at the
It's
moment.
incredibly long term.
Yeah.
That's fair.
Don't worry, we're here to help.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Any other things to go over? All right. Sounds good. Thank you all for being here at the meeting. Hopefully my spiel was not too mind-inducing about the lore, but, you know, good stuff, good stuff. We'll be here next week about regions and choosing region heads and possibly deities. We'll see what goes on. Anyways, ciao ciao peeps.